Hi, it's me, Ingrid FP, and I'm sitting on the edge of this clearing in the forest. It's like this big place, but the light is bad when I go like that, so we're going to sit like this. And I've been listening to the audiobook of about the Proto-Indo-European languages. Now, this was way above my knowledge level of linguistics and of anthropology and archaeology and everything. But it was really interesting. It's just that I had a hard time following because, an audiobook, I should have read the actual book, which probably, I hope that the book has maps and stuff so that you can see which areas she's talking about. She's talking about the Altai Mountains and the Uralic languages, and then she's talking about, you know, ancient Phoenicia and all sorts of different places and these different groups of people from different areas and the writing of the different words. So it's a little bit hard to follow with audiobook, but I do think that it does help in a certain way in that it talks a little bit about the pronunciation of different words that maybe when written down don't look very similar, but that actually are very similar when they're pronounced. So good job to the person who was narrating the audiobook, because she had to say quite a few words that are in sometimes extinct languages. So it was really interesting. She talked a lot about how there were certain myths that are common across all these places where Indo-European languages are, So there's the myth of the snake is a very common myth, and the fact that snakes in these myths seem to drink milk, which is not a thing that snakes do in general. So the fact that that is part of so many cultures from Pakistan, India, Iran, the Middle East, and up towards Norse, up in Scandinavia, and then it goes all the way across to the ancient Romans and the ancient Greeks and all of that they would have also twins were often associated with horses because of these different myths that have very many variations, but they come from the same group of people in the beginning. Then obviously a lot of mixing happening, and what is so sad is that it all started with, for this writer, this interest in Indo-European languages was from this excavation site in Ukraine, where a lot of these Indo-Europeans, Proto-Indo-Europeans, were living back when Proto-Indo-European was a language. And now, due to the war in Ukraine, we're not sure if, they've had to pause all research there, and maybe there is some damage to the archaeological sites where they had huge burial grounds. The Indo-European languages come from the steppe, and the language was invented before the wheel. Before, there wasn't a word for wheel because the wheel did not exist. And that's so crazy, to think that these people from who all of the different languages that now populate, most of the languages at least, that populate Europe and, Indo-European, actually, Sanskrit is derived from Indo-European, Indo-European. We're not sure, but there is that possibility. And apparently, like, Lithuanian is very close to Sanskrit, which is like so weird. And there are so many connections, and so that must mean that there was a group of people that spoke an intelligible language, that then migrated to so many different places. She goes a little bit about the Uralic languages like Finnish and the Baltic languages and the Slavic languages, and it's really interesting. I got a little bit lost because I don't know where Anatolia is, and I don't know where it was a bit much, but I realized, so a lot of the words that start being added to languages are according to what sort of nature and what sort of lifestyle that the people are having, So if you're in a maritime kind of a society, then you'll have like words for boats and that kind of thing. And you'll have words for the nature that's around you. And so I was thinking a little bit about that because it's just so wonderful to be connected to the place that you live in by knowing the names of the words of the plants and the animals and customs of the place that you live in. Now, by knowing certain languages, you can kind of guess your way through others that are in the same family. And yeah, so I was just thinking today about, like, because I did not grow up in Sweden, and my family is pretty international, even though we're, Western all over, My mom's American, my dad's Swedish, and I grew up in France. And I also grew up in cities. I've always lived in a city, so being connected to the actual plants and like knowing, oh, this plant means this, otherwise you're just like lost in all this. So I don't know what most of these plants are called, but I'm getting better at like recognizing certain things. So today I almost stepped on a snake, and the snake was one of those snakes that I encountered such a snake last year. It was really big then. This one was very small. It was like this big, or maybe a little bit bigger, like that. And it was one of those blind snakes, worm snake, which is actually a snake. It's just that it looks like a worm. And it is, not a dangerous snake. Sweden has like one dangerous snake. It has like 3 different kinds of snakes, and one of them is dangerous. So, but this one is actually called flower pot snake in Swedish, which is kind of fun. But yes, so it has different names in different languages, but I find it so funny to like think what people associate to different animals and plants. I saw it, and I would have called it a necklace snake had I not known what it was called, because it looked like a piece of metal. Like, it looks like somebody had dropped their necklace on the ground. And so I actually poked it with my foot, which was probably a stupid idea to do, but apparently if it gets aggressed, then it can like make a lot of smell. But I did not know this at the time, okay? So I poked it with my foot, and then it started moving, and I was like, what? I thought that it was like a necklace. But yeah, there probably is another snake out there in the world that's called the necklace snake. I haven't looked it up. And then later on during the day, I heard a huge bark out of nowhere, and I was like, is there a dog around? So I started looking around. It was a huge deer that was doing, their sound. Then we got whoa, whoa, like that kind of sound, and I was like, ooh. And they kept doing that. I don't know the behavior of deer, but yeah, it's just like I'm a stranger in a strange land whenever I'm in nature because I'm like, I did not grow up so close to nature. Um, so now I'm learning about these things. I wish I knew more, but it's like I'm alone and there's nobody really who can teach me these things. Um, but it's interesting, and I find language to be really interesting. I really like learning about these things. It is a whole other science than what I'm used to. um, but yeah, I also found out like how different words were formed and all that, which I found that book to be really nice. And it did not just go into the languages, it went into the cultures of these different groups. And, you know, like if they were hunter gatherers compared to if they were farmers, and how they know these things and how they excavate. Um, so I found that to be really interesting. My dad and my brother are coming to Sweden um, in July, just for a few days because they have to. My brother's going to become a Swedish citizen, so he needs to get his documentation and everything. But my dad wanted to see some rune stones, um, which are a thing here in Sweden. You know, like you can just like pass a runestone on your way somewhere. Often the runestone is like in the middle of nowhere and some kind of field, and you know, on the side of a highway or something. Um, there is one runestone here in this town where I'm at. Um, it's not the most fun runestone, but there are also some kind of other kind of prehistoric runestones in this town as well. But most runestones are like not in the proximity of any um, town or city, you know, because they were there. It was like a, you know, it's often is just says, you know, like here lies, what's a good Viking name? Gunhild or something. Here lies Gunhild, and yeah, I don't know if women had. I think women had maybe runestones for themselves. I don't know. Men had probably more likely. Here lies Thor. Here lies Thor, and he, you know, and Alfgar and Huldir built built up the stone. That's all it says often on these stones. It just says like the person who was buried here and who put up the stone. So it's not really that exciting. But sometimes they'll have some drawings or something like that. And it's just exciting to know, you know, like, oh, these people lived here and we can decipher these things. When I lived in France, I came from a town where a famous archaeologist came from. I don't need to reveal too much more, but you know, so I was really interested in all of these kinds of archaeology when I was little, and the Rosetta Stone and linguistics and etymology of different words. I just found that really interesting, and I think that yeah, I'd like to learn more about it. I don't know if there are some good books that people can recommend about this. Um, I haven't read so many like books that are specifically about that. Um, I'd like to know more. So tell me what you guys think. If anybody else is really interested in this kind of discussion. Um, I find it interesting because I meet people who can speak different languages, and you know, I'm friends with people who can speak different languages. Um, I met a patient who was Finnish Romani. I think that that's the way that they call themselves. Um, and it's interesting, you know, these groups of people that have a very specific kind of culture within a bigger culture. Um, I know that there are, like the people who Sweden sent to Eurovision were actually from Finland, and they spoke Finlandssvensk, which is it's basically a group in Finland that speak Swedish, and so they actually learn Swedish from birth, and they wouldn't count themselves as Swedish. They count themselves as Finnish Swedes. So there are all sorts of different cultures. Also, I've met some Icelandic people, and Icelandic is a really weird language, let's just say. I mean, Finnish is also a weird language because it's not Indo-European. It's actually Uralic. But yeah, so it's Icelandic is kind of like what ancient Norse was. It's much closer grammatically and everything to ancient Norse than any of the other Scandinavian or Germanic languages. So it's really interesting to hear, because what you're hearing is something that is very ancient. So yeah, I could go on and on. I'm going to stop now. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.